Welcome to this IT Governance mini-podcast. Steve Watkins is a renowned expert on the International Standard for Information Security Management, ISO 27001. Alongside Alan Calder, Steve led the UK's first successful certification project to the standard's precursor, BS 7799. He is, among other things, chair of the UK ISO 27001 user group, a member of ISO IEC JTC 1 SC27, the international technical committee responsible for the ISO 27000 family of standards, chair of IST 33, the UK National Standards Body Committee for Information Security, Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection, and a technical assessor for UCAS, conducting assessments of accredited certification bodies offering ISO 27001 certification. He's also the author of ISO IEC 27001-2022, An Introduction to Information Security and the ISMS Standard, a pocket guide to ISO 27001-2022, published by IT Governance Publishing. We spoke to him about his book and how the new standards will affect organisations.
So, Steve, you're the author of many books around cybersecurity and information management, and also, I suppose, a renowned expert on ISO 27001. And that's pretty much exactly why we've got you here today, to talk about ISO 27001 and your pocket guide around an introduction to information security and the ISMS standard. So, I suppose, diving straight into it, what does ISO 27001 sort of mean for organisations, and why is it important? Why should organisations be looking to get certified with this standard?
Okay, so 27001, it sets out the requirements for a recognised good practice approach to managing information security effectively. So as a standard, it sets out those requirements. The benefit of having a standard that sets out requirements means that there can be a certification scheme that runs alongside it.
Yeah.
And the certification scheme enables organisations to, if they achieve certification, demonstrate to both themselves, parts of the management, the board, etc., and to others that they manage information security in accordance with the requirements in 27001. The fact that ISO IEC 27001 is an international standard adopted globally therefore means that a certificate of conformity against that standard is recognised if it's part of the worldwide recognised scheme all around the globe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess it's important that I reflect that the pocket guide, the reason for the pocket guide effectively in the first instance, and this is the second or third edition now, I can't remember quite. The reason is that in my experience, a fair number of people understand one or two aspects of the combination of the discipline of information security, the benefits of a management system, and certification as those three aspects. And they understand that together they provide a powerful assurance mechanism for information security management. However, few get the key principles of all three of those, and that's where the pocket guide comes in. It covers these three issues at a high level and explains how together they enable organisations to demonstrate that they are and continue to effectively manage information security risk over time. So the pocket guide gives readers a base level understanding of how to use 27001 and the accredited certification scheme to good effect, really.
Yeah, and I suppose with cybercrime on the rise and this new hybrid working world that we seem to be in, having a standard like ISO 27001 in place and being able to demonstrate that you are, certified and compliant with it is going to become increasingly more important as well, isn't it?
Sure, yeah, and the rate of change, you've touched on the enforced or acceleration of the move to hybrid working. The sheer rate of change of technology and working practices effectively has been reflected in the latest editions of ISO 27001 and its, I'll call it a sister standard, 27002. And in particular, the controls. So for those who aren't familiar with the two standards, ISO 27001 contains the requirements for the management system that helps the organisation identify the measures it wants to put in place to manage information security effectively, and how to monitor those and ensure they're effective and remain appropriate for the changing world we live in. And 27002 then provides guidance on a candidate set of controls that the organisation implementing an information security management system, once they've determined the controls they require, they should do a sense check against the controls that are in Annex A of 27002, which happens to be exactly the same control set in Annex A of 27001, which happens to be exactly the same control set as those detailed in 27002, but 27002 gives or provides many more pages and pages of guidance on those controls. The 2022 version of those two standards has updated that control set with a new structure, a new approach, some new thinking behind the controls, and bringing them up to date.
Okay, and you mentioned controls there. So what specifically are the controls for ISO 27001, for those that aren't aware?
Okay, so the controls in Annex A are 27001 2022 being the year the international version was published of the latest edition. They fall into 4 categories. There's 93 controls in all. They fall into 4 categories. So there's organisational, which tends to relate to more than one person. And I'm emphasising that because the second category is people, and those controls relate to individuals effectively. So that would be things like screening, awareness, those sorts of issues that deal with individuals as opposed to an organisational wide people issue, which might be a policy statement, that sort of thing. Then there's physical controls. So information security, as I'm sure many are aware, is not solely related with information technology concerns. It spans physical access, of course. If someone walks out with a hard copy of information, then that could potentially hurt just as much as if they hacked your system and downloaded that information or viewed it on a screen.
Yeah,
so
just a
physical
different format,
controls,
isn't it? Yeah.
Indeed, yeah. So physical controls is the third heading, if you want. And the fourth is technological, which most people get for information security. So there's 4 headings that those 93 controls in Annex A of 27001 are brigaded under. And if we're looking at the difference between the 2022 version of the control set and the previous version, 2013, the structure's changed somewhat. So
in what way?
There used to be 14 headings instead of the 4 I've just described. And each of those headings would have one or more control objectives. So if you imagine a family tree, each control category, the 14 of them, would have control objectives under it, and under each control objective there would be a number of controls, whereas now the 93 controls are simply listed under the 4 headings I mentioned earlier, with each control having a title, and then there's what's called some attributes associated with the control, which are designed to help ISMS managers and risk managers ensure that they've got the appropriate blend of controls to address any particular risk. There's a statement of the actual control, which expands on the control title. Some of the control titles can be quite misleading, whereas the control tends to expand on that slightly and give a broader understanding, or at least a better understanding of how broad the control could be. In fact, I just blogged on exactly that issue recently, and it got quite a few comments and attracted quite a bit of attention. So the difference between the control title and the control and the guidance that comes after it. So coming back to 27002, we've got the control title, as I've said, the attributes, the control, the purpose, why the control is likely to be selected or applied, and then guidance on the control and the considerations that anyone deploying the control should bear in mind when they're implementing it.
Yeah. And so there's obviously been like an update from the 2013 version and into this 2022 version of ISO 27001. What other changes, has there been much by way of change for the new standard or the new version of the standard?
So the management system requirements in 27001 have changed. There's generally two schools of thought as to how significant these changes might be. One is they're not really, are they? All you need to do is consider a new control set. And the second one is that actually there are changes, and of course they need to be reflected in an information security management system. I fall into the second category. There are changes. And whilst the key one is comparing the organisation's determined controls against those in Annex A, there are numerous other tweaks, if you want, in 27001 management system requirements, including some swapping around of clause numbers, which really won't help those who think they've got spreadsheets and toolkits that are nice and easy to use and maintain. So yeah, it's worth anyone looking to transition from the 2013 version of the standard to 2022 to look at those changes in some detail and work out how they might adapt and develop their information security management system best to reflect the changed requirements. As I say, there's a couple where it's simply swapping clause numbers, but there's others where defining the need for processes and how processes are going to be effective, etc., could have quite an impact.
So yeah, I suppose someone that is looking to sort of implement ISO 27001 new to the game, I suppose, it's kind of going to be relatively straightforward, but there is still going to be a bit of work for those that have already implemented ISO 27001 in terms of reflecting those changes. It's not going to be an easy ride.
Sure, yeah. It's 27001 has always been, since the initial version in 2005, and indeed the British standard that was available prior to 27001 2005, it's always been positioned as scalable for any size organisation or degree of complexity or risk. And so, of course, those organisations that have implemented an information security management system reflecting the requirements in 27001 in a relatively low-risk, non-complex environment, the changes will not be hugely significant. Whereas if there is a large, complex, high-risk scenario and the information security management system has the intricacies and details to reflect that, then I'd suggest the changes to the requirement standard 27001 would have a bigger effect.
Yeah.
A larger effect on.
Yeah. I suppose this is quite a basic question, but how does ISO 27001 work? How do organisations implement those controls that you were just talking about?
Okay, so there's a number of approaches that have evolved over the years as to how you might want to implement a management system that reflects the requirements in 27001.
So it's not a one size fits all. It's kind of what suits your organisation.
Yeah, sure. And there's different methods. The standard itself says that the numbering of the management system requirements, the clauses in the standard, is purely for reference purposes. Some methods of implementing an information security management system see them as the order of tasks to implement the ISMS. In my experience, having worked with information security management systems and standards since the mid to late 90s, dare I say, that dates me. Over that period, I'd suggest that actually working through clause, and I'm going to start at clause 4 for a reason, because 1, 2, and 3 are not really got that many requirements in them, but they do have consequences for clauses 4 through 10, which is where the management system requirements are defined. So in my experience, starting with clause 4 and working your way through is not as effective as possibly addressing, say, some of the support issues around resources, communication, control of documentation and documented information. And put in a continual improvement and improvement activities, processes and records around that, or mechanism of capturing records around that in place early on, helps the project proceed appropriately. And if the organisation opts to go for certification, it means you're generating evidence earlier on in your project to demonstrate to an external auditor that you have been practicing continual improvement. Whereas if improvement being item 10 out of clauses 4 to 10, if you follow the sequence of clauses in the standard, the numerical references, you end up putting a process in place to manage improvement and capture the records which are required to demonstrate to an auditor after you've implemented everything, which is a whole raft of improvement.
Yeah, 100%. So what would be your advice be for organisations that are looking to start their certification journey for ISO 27001? What are the requirements? How can they sort of ensure the systems they set up and put in place are effective?
Do some research. I was going to say, buy my book.
Buy the Pocket Guide, available on itgovernancepublishing.co.uk.
Yeah, any of the books. Where to start? Read around it, make sure that you understand what you're committing to from the outset, and that requires commitment from the top management in an organisation. Trying to put an information security management system into any sort of organisation by stealth behind without the top management realising it isn't going to work. It's not going to be an information security management system. It'll be a probably ill-fated initiative. It'll fall flat on its face. So read around it, make sure you're understanding what you're committing to at the outset, make sure top management are on side, get that commitment, and from that commitment onwards, and this goes for any size of organisation, think about what competencies, so knowledge and skills you need in order to deliver the project, and have you got them in-house? If you haven't got them in-house, do you want to develop them in-house? Do you want to buy them in? Do you want to find some other solution? And then most methodologies say, well, make sure you've got a copy of the standard. I've got to admit, I think that's a really good idea. It's not technically a requirement of the standard that you have a copy of it, but it's pretty hard to make sure you meet the requirements of the standard without actually having a copy of it. So buy a copy of the standard. Buy a copy of the standard. That's not a bad idea. And I should, in having said that, flag that really, if you're buying a copy of 27001, you need to have a copy of 27002. So really appreciate the breadth and depth of each of the controls in Annex A of 27001, so that when you do the comparison between the controls you've determined as necessary, which you can source from anywhere you want, or you can make your own up, when you compare those against those in Annex A of 27001, that you've got a full appreciation of that control in Annex A by referencing 27002. And there's really good guidance in there anyway. It's a valuable document, in my opinion. The other standard that's relevant is ISO IEC 27000. That's relevant because it's a normative reference from 27001. A normative reference in layman's speak, rather than a formal term, is basically you can't read and apply this without looking at this other document. So you've got to have access to at least the terms and definitions aspect of 27000. ISO IEC 27000 in order to be able to interpret and apply ISO IEC 27001.
Yeah, one of those things where some people always insist on putting together IKEA furniture without looking at the directions, but having the directions there is probably a good idea, and you should be referring to them.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. And the only problem is you buy 27001 and you don't get You don't get the instruction book in with it if you're comparing the instruction book to the terms and definitions. So a lot of people might not appreciate that the term internal audit is defined as a documented process to ... So actually, the inference from that definition is that you are required to have a documented process describing your approach to internal audit, because the definition says it's a documented process too. It's definitions like that some may not grasp. It also usefully defines information security, and that would help readers understand, or users understand, why clause 612 of 27,001/2022 talks about the information security risk assessment covering consequences of having confidentiality, integrity and availability compromised. And I know some of the people I've worked with over the years would have been very disappointed if I hadn't got that reference in to CIA at least once in this conversation.
Yeah. One of the things that you actually mentioned just previously was kind of getting buy-in from the top, so from the board, for when you start on your ISO 27001 journey. I suppose how do you pitch this to the board? Because it's obviously it's a lot of time, it's a lot of investment. It's not a small project at all. How do you convince people to buy in to implementing ISO 27001? We have far too many acronyms in this industry. And putting an information security management system in place.
So it depends partly on what sector the organisation's in, and some organisations they're driven to or required to look at 27001 by their clients. Their clients demand it, or potentially regulatory or a licensing authority mandates that the organisation will adopt or comply with or achieve certification to 27001. In that case, you tend to find that management are not so much committed to implementing an information security management system that meets the requirements of 27001. They're more committed to getting a certificate on the wall that says they've got an information security management system that reflects the requirements of 27001. And there's a difference.
They want the sticker, the shiny gold sticker.
Yeah, they want the sticker. They don't want
the hassle.
Yeah, they don't want the hassle ultimately. Now, if you can sell the benefits of an information security management system to top management, they're committed to the management system that will give, if you engage an accredited certification body to deliver the audits and award a certificate if they find you're in conformity, it will give a certificate in due course. And, even if top management are committed to to getting that certificate on the wall in the first instance, if the information security management system's designed well and the monitoring, measurement, analysis, evaluation, and the whole kit and caboodle does what it should be doing, it will demonstrate to management its own worth over time through management review and performance monitoring of the ISMS. So in due course, they should become, or they'll start to appreciate and realise the value of the management of the ISMS, and therefore become more committed to the ISMS than retaining a certificate on the wall. Although that certificate on the wall will still be necessary, of course, because clients are demanding it and regulators or licensing authorities might be mandating it.
Yeah. So Steve, lovely to have you on board, and hopefully chat again soon.
Thanks, Kenny.
You can buy ISO IEC 27001-2022, An Introduction to Information Security and the ISMS Standard from IT Governance Publishing, and all good retailers.